Gentlemen, that was a killer show. Well done.
I think that was pretty good. I actually had a question. I was kind of bummed that Chris couldn't hang around for the after show. I think it would have been too much in the show. But Patrick, you might have a sense of this. So the one thing that really surprised me, not surprising, but just struck me, was kind of the brevity and almost cold nature of the official Nintendo press release, and I assume it's just, you know,
those title votes coming at showbot.tv while we discuss.
Yeah. I assume that it's just, you know, anywhere between Japanese culture, Japanese business culture, but just like the one line, Satoru Iwata has died, you know, bile duct growth, like, and just the facts of his life, as opposed to a more what I would, you know, you have even business press releases on stuff like that tend to be a little flowery.
I think part of it is culture. I mean, sentimentality, open sentimentality that way isn't usually expressed especially from a corporation, because it's considered impolite.
Gotcha.
But you know, it's, you know, for a lot, I think at least in Western societies, there's a propensity to kind of spin everything into kind of a emotion that people can, for the better part of a, you know, lack of a better term, they can kind of relate to. You know, if someone like Steve Jobs or something, you definitely have that impact. But you know, it's you can't really see everything through that lens.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I understand what you're saying, but to me, that isn't all that remarkable. I mean, that was pretty common in the U.S. up until like the 80s. Like, actually, they were still doing all the way to the end of the 80s. They would say something.
Even in the UK, there's still sort of in the press, an inclination to not lionize the dead, to talk about their failures as well as their accomplishments. Whereas the U.S., we've kind of tend to, you know, if somebody has just died, to go easy on
and I think it's, you know, it's maybe our talk show kind of culture where we feed. We feel the
beat
need
on
to
them
express.
so much when they're alive that we feel bad.
Well, we feel the need to express, but it's also considered poor form to piss on the grave of someone, even if they were like the worst boss on the planet, because it's just considered like you don't do that. And you know, it does very, even like, you know, as Tom was saying, it differs even from closely related cultures on how people treat it. So,
well, I think it wasn't necessarily, you know, it was, and not to say that anything is wrong, right? I mean, it's just it's something that you know, I looked at and like, oh wow, that was, you know, and I read it as like, oh, that's very Japanese to have two lines. This person died, this is how they died, and then this is how old they were, as opposed to, and not necessarily to lionize, right? But just to, like, you know, this person was at the company for X amount of years. He worked on the following things, and he became CEO, like, at this point. But even like, not necessarily a lionizing, but just like a kind of a little bit of an explanation of who they were. We have a baby.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, you know, I'm not a full expert in this, but it doesn't feel to me like this is necessarily a Japanese way of approaching it. I haven't read too many press releases in Japanese, but my impression is not that, oh, this is how the Japanese do it. It might be in these cases, very possible, but for me, I would think it's more of just the way they decided to do it in this instance.
Okay.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of lines about, who he was, where he came from, what his contributions were, these kinds of things. But they didn't even announce that they had a plan in place to, you know, well, not at least a transitional plan. They just said the people in place are going to stay there. So I don't know. I think they wanted to keep it as short as possible, and they definitely did it.
Yeah.
By the way, for title, I'm just going to make an executive decision today. His game ended before its time, which was Dark Redeemers. I just perfect.
That's good.
Note perfect.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm going to make a father decision and check off so I can change it.
Thanks, Roger. Enjoy.
So, do you need me to upload video? Nothing, or is that good? I mean, I'll do the post stuff, but
No, I'll do the regular thing.
Okay. But you got the regular thing.
Yeah, I got the regular thing.
Okay. All right. Cool. Then I will see you mañana.
Cool. Thanks, Roger.
Bye.
Yeah, I certainly. I mean, I knew that he was beloved, and I'd seen Nintendo Direct, and I'd even seen a couple of the Iwata Asks videos, and I thought he was an interesting guy. But it even took me by surprise just how sincere the outpouring was. And I think part of that is not just that he was beloved for many good reasons, but also the surprise nature of it. You know, and he was only 55, for goodness sake.
For sure. And we didn't have, unlike Steve Jobs, we didn't have any inkling that this was going to happen.
Right.
Except
There wasn't
for
a
his
years-long build-up.
Well-treated. Yeah. But, yeah, and it's also, Nintendo in everyone's psyche, even if they aren't active gamers, it's one of the only big gaming companies that remains from that golden period of the 80s. Late 80s and early 90s. Everyone remembers the NES or Super NES, and you can't really say the same, even, for very successful companies like, let's say, Blizzard. You remember them from the late 90s. So it doesn't your childhood in the same way.
Or if there's, an Atari, it's not the same as the Atari you grew up with, right?
Well,
and you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, Atari has disappeared. Sega has essentially disappeared. Those few companies that had the same kind of impact are not there anymore.
Yeah, Sega's even better. I mean, Atari is out there, but it's just a brand name now. Sega's an even better example where it's still the same company, but it just doesn't feel the same.
Well, it's not only did they let go of hardware, but they also, ironically or not, last week the president of Sega issued a public apology saying that, he had let down the fans because the quality of the games they're putting out is so low that people just don't trust them anymore. And they have at least come to that realization. But, thinking this of Atari is impossible, of Sega. Back then, they were so big, and it's like you had Neo Geo and NEC with the TurboGrafx, if you want to go a little bit more niche, but all of those have basically disappeared. Even Square, has merged with Enix, and Square, which is Final Fantasy.
I forget that was a merger. I just think of Square Enix as one thing. You're right. I just forget.
Final Fantasy, it could have that kind of emotional impact, but it just... Even them, they're still here, they're still big, but it's not the same thing. So
it is maybe the most unique company in that industry. In that, I think we talked about a while ago, and this is before they made the deal with Universal Studios, that like Nintendo would be an acquisition target for a company like Disney, just for the IP, for property. And there have been a lot of very, very popular video games. There have been a lot of very, very popular characters. But nobody has the enduring kind of legacy, and that repeatedly creates more and more. That all of a sudden the new Zelda game is out and it's great, or there's a new Mario game, there's Super Smash Brothers. They continually, successfully renew that well for their IP, which is mind blowing. And Iwata was such
It does make you wonder. And I don't want to be too conspiratorial here, but it does make you wonder if you have Iwata as the kind of CEO who resists pressures to do things like famously, moving to mobile and porting games specifically to mobile. That's not even what they're doing with the DNA thing. That when he is now no longer in charge is part of the reason they're not rushing to give more details and rushing to name even an interim, that they plan to make a lot of changes that he wouldn't allow them to make.
I think the big question there would be exactly how ferocious and how many wolves he was keeping at bay on those issues by his force of personality. And that's something that I certainly don't know enough about the internal politics of that company to make a guess on. But you would have to think that there are some market pressures that say, hey, if you were to put Legend of Zelda as a $5 download on Google and the App Store, you would make Y amount of money, and it would be the biggest thing in gaming for X amount of time with just a straight port. So that's
well, the thing is. The thing is, Japanese companies, I mean, I don't know the internal politics of Nintendo either, but Japanese companies and Japanese culture in general is based on consensus. And you cannot do anything. Oftentimes, actually, you're paralyzed by the fact that you need everyone on board to do anything. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have sometimes people that, become political and want to oust someone or take the company in a different direction, but I cannot imagine that in the case of Nintendo now, Iwata was moving, was the one person that was trying to move the company in a certain direction, with everyone looking at their, shoes and thinking, when he's gone, we're going to be doing things differently. Especially since Nintendo is a company from Kyoto, which is even more traditionalist than the Tokyo crowd. So I have to think that he did represent the ethos of a company in a way that was shared by other important people in that company. So I would be surprised if they suddenly changed course or altered these kinds of decisions that have kept them apart, from the devastation really in the Japanese game industry from the past 15 years, because it is a minefield, and there have been many victims, as we said, and Nintendo is still strong out there. So I don't think they would disavow his the direction he set for the company. I don't think it would happen, but.
All right, guys. I'm gonna head out, but great show, man.
Yeah. Well done. Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
We need to do an FSL Tonight recording this week.
We do. We can figure it out, but Wednesday I think will probably be best for me.
All right. Yeah, email me or text me and we'll nail down a time. Wednesday works for me too.
All right. Peace out.
Cheers.
Bye.
And I'm out of the post of all
Nice.
things.
So
Can you
that's
believe
it.
that?
Oh wait, I forgot to ask Roger if he would do the show notes.
I thought that's what he was implying.
Okay. That everything
That he would do his
implying
regular
everything
bit, which is usually
normal.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
I'll let you guys figure it out for sure. But that's what I took, was that he was like, "Oh, I'll do my regular show notes bit, but you'll do the video."
I dig it.
I think that's what's going on.
All right.
All right. Well, this is a sad day, so we're not
I
gonna
know.
joke
We're not
around.
gonna do that thing we
Yeah,
do.
I just don't feel it. But stay
Yeah.
tuned for Cord Killers immediately following our Nintendo memories.